Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Good, Brave, and Heroic podcast or YouTube channel, Instagram, all the things. Hi. My name is Joanna, and here is my husband. Say your name.
Your name.
Okay.
My name is Eddie Munoz.
Okay. And today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about our testimonies and how we came to God and the journey that's been. So yeah, come along.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like what would be the best way to do that. So like that it's not one of us talking for 20 minutes and then the other person talking for 20 minutes. So we can do either one of two things. I'm not sure which one they'll like more, but we can either like come up with time frames to talk about that we can share with each other, even though we kind of know already, or the person could just share and the other person jump in and ask questions. And
yeah, I think it would benefit people for us to just start telling our story and interrupt each other to ask questions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the most natural conversation.
Okay. So for me, the logical place is to kind of start with family of origin.
Like Genesis?
Oh boy. You're joking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, our family of origin.
I know.
Yeah, okay. You had me there for a second. And kind of just, I mean, that's not how we came to Christ, but kind of discuss our childhood and, you know, those things that we kind of went through so that people kind of understand what led up. Because both of us came to Jesus at young ages. I was 10 years old.
I was 15.
Yeah, so that's pretty young. You know, we weren't out there 30 years old, lives of sin and heroin and debauchery. No, that's not, it's like you're 30 years old, you automatically try the heroin. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this is going to an interesting place already. But no, we were really young, and that doesn't mean that we didn't have pieces of our story that didn't go a certain way or failed God in certain ways. But yeah, when you come to God when you're young, it's like, it's different.
But those are rough ages. Those are still rough ages because I think it's really different for the experience that a young boy goes through and a young woman goes through or a young girl. At your age, you're like, what, how old are you?
10 or 11.
You're like right at the cusp of like getting your eyes, like getting exposed to like sexual things. Like there's this hyper focus on sexuality.
Yeah, that's true. How old are you in third grade? Hey Siri, how old are you in third grade?
I'm not sure I understand.
The question was pretty simple. I'm reading it too. It says, how old are you in third grade?
I think like
I don't have an answer for that.
9.
Yeah, so I was exposed to like porn in third grade.
Yeah.
So maybe even younger, actually, now I think about it. But like for sure in third grade, which I hear is the common age, 8, 9 years old. Plus at 10 years old, you're about to become a teenager.
You're
at
a
13.
preteen.
So you're going through a lot of stuff. At 10 years old, you're just like, you just got into like, I don't know what grade. I wish I knew what grade. I wish we prepared for this, but I didn't know we were going to talk about this specifically. But you're 4th, 5th, 6th grade.
You're about to go into middle school.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like that around that middle school age, and a lot is changing. You're learning a lot about yourself. You're establishing individuality from your parents. You're more invested in your friend groups. So yeah, it is an interesting time.
And then 15 is that wild time. 15
is that wild time. What does that mean?
15, I mean, you start getting more interested in like parties and hanging out with your friends and going out, go to the movies and all that.
Right. You get more freedom.
Yeah, well, in some households.
Unless your parents are Spanish and you're
And Ortiz.
Yeah.
That's my maiden name, if you didn't know. Yeah, that's 15 is a crucial time. So I feel like God really came through on that one, because that time can really just go one way or the other. And I feel like God saved me from some craziness, not that I was doing anything crazy per se, but like, there's that potential, especially in an urban setting. Just put in all the factors for that kind of recipe. Something's not happening.
Right, and even if God didn't save us at a young age to prevent something, he may have done it for investing good.
Yeah.
Just more time or whatever. Probably a mixture of the two. I have my fair share of interesting stories. However, but yeah, for me growing up, I grew up with my mother. My parents, as you know, but maybe they don't know, my parents separated and divorced when I was 1. So I never really experienced my mother and father in one home, at least to a level of cognizance of being aware of it, because, I was still 1 as far as I know. So there was a time when they were together. So early on, as far as I can remember, my parents were not together. And so my mother had to do everything that she could to make ends meet. As a young Puerto Rican woman coming to the States, learning English as a second language, I don't know how she did it so quickly, because as far back as I remember, she spoke
just Spanish.
No, she spoke good English.
Oh, okay.
Like my mom's English and Spanish is pretty broken, and she knows that, but she speaks good English. Like, she can hold a conversation. She can understand everybody. Like, she's not gonna have any issues there. And as far back as I can remember, it's always been that way.
Oh, okay.
And so she had to have learned English pretty quickly, because if I'm not mistaken, she was 20 or 21 when she came over here. And at that age, you're already older. When you're a kid is the time where you learn very easily. But
and there's not much grace. Everything's hitting you at once. You're a mom. You have to figure it out. You're in
she
the
moved
workforce.
over here to be with my father, to escape Puerto Rico and stop dealing with a bunch of the issues she was dealing with there, and just drama and gossip and problems she was having in her neighborhood and stuff like that. And she was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to start a new life with my dad. And she came here and started to experience new problems, racism in America. I remember her telling me that people, would put her down for not knowing or speaking English well or without an accent at first. And even as far forward as when she went to college, I remember my mom was in college for a really long time, because when I was younger, she was trying to do it with me. And so she didn't graduate until I graduated college.
She didn't graduate until I met you guys. I was a part of this graduation.
Yes. And she was in college since I was like 6, 7 years old, I think, or something like that. All of that is estimates because I was a kid. I don't remember exact dates. But I remember when I was younger and she was at Kane, she would come home crying because the professors would be like, what the heck is wrong with you?
Yeah, she had that one particular professor. I remember her talking about it.
Yeah, that professor just like ridiculed her for her English. Yeah. And like, so my mom was going through everything that she was going through, on top of the fact that she was adopted. My mother was adopted. My mother went through what she went through with my father. She went through what she went through personally. Then they divorced, so she had to figure it out, make ends meet. As a young Puerto Rican woman, English as a second language, with a baby.
Yeah, and raise a young boy by herself.
Now, she did have her brother, my uncle. He was local, and him and my aunt helped her a lot. but that's all she had, you know, and even with their help, it's still not nowhere near enough. And so growing up, I spent a lot of time alone. First, I had a babysitter. I don't have many memories of the babysitters that I had. I have a few. But I remember at about, I want to say 8 or 9 years old, maybe, give or take. I was a latchkey kid. For whoever doesn't know what a latchkey kid is, the latchkey is the key that goes on the door and you close it from the inside of your apartment.
That little, the chain.
Right. And so latchkey kids were those kids who were or are those kids who their parents say, make sure you lock the door because they're alone. And that was my mom's only option. She really didn't have another option. We had a neighbor. Her name was Rogelia. Very, 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 very nice Mexican lady who lived across from us in the apartment next door. And my mom would always just tell Rogelia, like, hey, you know, can you just keep an eye, keep an ear out? And I knew that if there was something I really needed, I could go to her. But I never really did. And I was still in the apartment alone. And so growing up, my mom was my hero. And at the same time, I was very lonely, right? One time I gave my testimony at church and talked about the loneliness and the pain associated with growing up as a latchkey kid. And my mom was really grieved by that because to her, she was like, I didn't know, is what she said. And she looked like she was full of shame. But the thing about it is that we we're typically not able to hold the tension of two truths at the same time. Like Tim Ross always says. It's and it's like, you know, yes, my mom was my hero because she did everything in her power to provide for me. And, right, I was extremely lonely. It also created self-sufficiency in me. It also created a fierce independence in me where I don't really know how to ask people for help for big and meaningful things. And I grew up very emotionally, like I struggled emotionally. And then things didn't really go well for me at school. I was bullied a lot. I was put down a lot. And so I was carrying all of these things up until my time of meeting Jesus, which amazingly enough, my mom is the one who led me to Jesus. And so
sweet.
Yeah, it's like a full circle moment. And so I remember the times sitting in the apartment and my mom would go to work right after I got home from school. So I would see her for an hour a day. And I would eat dinner by myself. I would watch TV to try to not feel so alone. And I used to be really scared at night. I used to sleep with the TV on. I slept in my mom's bed. My mom didn't have a room. Her bed was in the living room. But I still slept in the living room because I felt safer there. And I remember late at night, shows like Captain Planet would come on. And I loved Lucy. I lived off of those late night shows because they gave me the only comfort that I could have. And so, yeah, like it was tough. It was tough. Even though I knew that my mom had to do it. She didn't have another option. I remember recently looking through paperwork for kindergarten that I had in my like children's book. It's like one of those books that parents put together with pictures and stuff. And in there was like the receipt for kindergarten, and she was receiving state aid, and they were paying like 90% of it. And it was like so low what she had to pay. And I knew she was still struggling. And I think about like people who are going through similar stuff now, like they're struggling too. And how hard it was for my mom to do everything that she had to do just to keep us afloat. And yeah, you know, I was growing up. I was extremely lonely at home. And it's not like I went to school and I had all these friends.
Well, you went from extreme loneliness, from being alone at home, to all these kids and all these adults, and that normal was very different, you know, and everyone comes with their own normal, and it's shocking, you know, it's very shocking, because you go, like, you're not just home alone, but you don't have conversations, you just don't have socialization.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you have to socialize.
Yeah. And then nothing I did was accepted. You know,
you didn't have a sense either.
Yeah, first, second, third grade, fourth grade.
You were small, really small.
I was small. I didn't have cool clothes because my mom couldn't afford it. She also didn't know what cool clothes was, you know. So, you know, it just felt, when I was really little, especially first, second, and third grade, I remember being the toughest. It always just felt like nobody really wanted to rock with me. I was also really chubby. I had a panza, and I didn't play sports. In each grade, I had like one friend that I could remember, which is still good, you know, because at least if you have one person, you have something. I was geeky. I was very interested in nerdy stuff. Loved Power Rangers. I loved Animorphs and
geeky.
Batman.
Everybody likes Power Rangers.
No, but I was like, and I still am like this, right? Where I have a personality that I dive into things, and I get very excited, and I love them, and all I want to do is talk about them. And everybody's like, especially as you get older, fourth, fifth, they like it, but they're like, yeah, Batman's cool. Like, yeah, you know, and it's just like, I was never like that. I was like, oh my goodness, did you see this? Blah, blah. And so people, when I got like that, would be like, yo, chill, you're a little too much. So I always felt, growing up, I just always felt like I was too much and too little at the same time. And yeah, like that was me. That was family. You know, my mom was all I had, you know, growing up. I visited my father, and I loved my father. I wanted his attention. You know, but he worked a lot too. So I would visit him, and then I would barely see him, which didn't really make sense to me as a kid. But I got to see my cousins and my sisters. I visited my grandparents, and I love my grandparents on my mother's side dearly in Puerto Rico. When I would visit my dad, my aunt and my grandmother were usually there. I think, if I remember correctly, they almost always lived in Brooklyn too, growing up, I want to say. And I always spent time with my aunt, who is also my godmother, Titi Sheila, and my grandma all the time. And my grandma used to sometimes take me to Puerto Rico. So I did have connections with my other family members that I really loved and appreciated. But then I came back home to my mom. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they were all far. So my mom was everything, because she was the one who was always with me, and she was the one who was sacrificing everything for me. And on a day-to-day basis, even though she was all I had, she wasn't able to be there. So while I don't want to diminish any of the connections I had with other family members, it was my reality. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
So this is baby Eric's experience, first, second, third grade. And then you get to, because you're so small. Like, Kaya's,
I know you're like, baby Eric.
I'm thinking of Kaya. You're not far off. Like, Kaya's not far off from first, second, third grade.
Yeah, it's true.
And that hurts my soul to think about. Like, small Eric, I can't even.
My school, at least for me, school was brutal.
Kids are cruel. Kids are very cruel
Those
too.
years were really tough.
God, please raise kind children if you're watching this. So this is your reality. Fast forward to 10 years old. How does your mom get to know Christ? Because she's not a Christian yet, right? Herself.
No.
But she comes to know Christ, and then how does that
Yeah,
happen?
so I believe things kind of started because she met my stepdad. And my stepdad was like, yo, shorty was good. And my mom was
if
like...
you know Manny, that is not how he's
If you know my
talking.
stepdad, that is complete. He is like, he's a political science major, salesman, that like...
Very proper
Dominican, which is like, you don't really see that very often. Except when you hear him sometimes, the Dominican accent starts coming out when he's like with his cousins and stuff. But otherwise, he speaks Spanish like very... And so, he was like, yo, what's up, shorty, blah, blah. They were working together. And my mom was not feeling him. She wasn't feeling him because he's a little bit younger. And eventually, I think she gave him a shot, and he's a Christian. And so he starts talking to her about the Lord. And my mom and me went on a trip to Puerto Rico. And she took this book with her. I don't know who gave her the book. I don't know if it was him or, whatever. But it was this book called Power for Living. It was this blue book. They used to come up on commercials. I don't know if you remember. A bunch of celebrities were promoting the book that were Christians. And it was their testimonies in the book. And it was called Power for Living. And it gave you like, meet God so that you have power for living, whatever. I never read it, but that was like the premise, I guess.
I must have been asleep.
Anyway, so it was an infomercial. I don't, maybe you wouldn't remember because it has no connection to you, but for me it does because my mom read it. So my mom, I remember we're at the beach and she's reading this book. And at the end of the book, it invites you to accept Christ into your life. And how dope is this, right? Like, it's already dope that the first people to preach the good news is women, right? Like, people don't talk about that, but let's talk about it, right? I believe in women preachers, so anyways, I don't know what your theology is. Anyways, so the sip. The first people to preach the good news, to say Jesus is back, is women. And what do you think the first thing my mom does? As a fresh baby Christian, she shares the gospel with her son. She's like, this is such good news to me. I need to share this with my son, who I love. So I'd love to hear from her
point of view.
Yeah, like how everything happened, because I only know from my point of view. We've never really talked about it. But we clean up for the beach and we're leaving for the day, and we pack everything into the rental car, and we're on in our favorite beach in Puerto Rico is by this bridge called Puente Los Hermanos, which is by El Caribe Hilton, which I always say Vete pa'l Caribe Hilton, which is a hotel. It's an inside joke. Anyway, so it's like this night. It's just like a little tiny beach. It's nothing crazy, but that's just our beach. And so right there on La Puente de los Hermanos, which is the bridge, the car's parked there. She stops and she pulls me over. She says, "Eric, I want to tell you something." I remember I was shook. I was like,
"What I do?"
Yeah, what I do? Like, what happened? What you want to talk about? It's like
what I do?
Spanish parents only want to talk to you when they want to correct you.
Everything starts flashing through your mind. Like...
Anyway, so she tells me about what just happened to her. She tells me, I just came to Jesus. No, that's not what she said. That sounds so weird. I just came to Jesus. No, she tells me, like, I was reading this book and explained to me what it means to come to Jesus, and then tells me that she accepted Jesus. And then I remember after everything, I was standing up, she was sitting down, and I remember she asked me, do you want to accept Jesus too? And I said, yeah. I was a 10-year-old kid, right? To me, this is my salvation moment. Maybe I wasn't aware enough, but to me, it was, I understood enough, right? But also at the same time, it was my mom. Of course I was going to say, yeah, like I trusted her. And I remember in that moment, what I felt for her was trust. I'm like, if this is something that is both important to you and this meaningful to you, then of course I want to do it too. And so while I didn't fully understand, I think I understood enough for it to be legitimate. And so she does a prayer with me, I accept Jesus, and the rest is history. So let's put a pause there and let's talk about you.
Is this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're rolling.
Okay.
We had to pause because we had, we got kids and stuff, and we gotta go
Tend to them.
Yeah. They didn't need to know that, but go ahead.
Okay.
We literally put a long comma, like a 2-hour comma.
That was a period. Okay. Me. Where do I start? So I accepted Christ at the age of 15.
You started at the end.
But we started in the beginning with that.
No, we started with family of origin.
No, that's how we introduced
Okay.
it.
It's just like, yeah, I accepted Christ at 15, and yeah.
I wasn't done. That was my introduction.
Thanks,
Have
guys.
you written papers before? You put your thesis and your points.
What is your thesis statement?
All right. Now you're mocking me.
I want to know.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Okay.
You want to vote? You guys want to vote? Is he mocking me or not?
Leave it in the comments.
Okay. So I accepted Christ at the age of 15. I had a very, how would I describe it? Okay.
They won't hear that.
Oh, okay.
Or they shouldn't.
I had a pretty turbulent life. It was a lot. It was a mixed bag of things. I grew up with both my parents in my home. I am the oldest of 4 children, and we have large gaps in between. So we're like 6-7 years apart. Like the youngest is about to be 12. And throughout childhood, my parents had a very difficult marriage, which in turn made parenting interesting. How do I even describe that? My family was always really important to me. It was also a pain point for me. I took on this role of being like a mediator, a fixer,
Third parent.
a third parent, just another little adult. And I lived a life where I had to grow up faster than I needed to.
Yeah.
I was exposed to things, saw things in and out of my home that just made me grow up, made me fast forward. I'm grateful for the very intentional ways that my mom really worked at trying to preserve childhood, and sometimes even my dad. But there was just a lot of gray, a lot of darkness that always overpowered. And it really colored the way that I responded to things. So like, for example, emotionally, because I had to grow up so fast, emotionally, I always lived fast. So I think maybe I noticed things like, this is how I feel, or this is what's coming up for me. But I would feel the need to move past it because there's no time for that.
Yeah. And
so I never got a chance to really feel things, even though I could. I think because I didn't get that chance, I felt things deeply, and I was very passionate about them. And so that led me to, something's got to change. And so there's little old me just like talking to my parents about we need change and advocating for change in our family, in their marriage, advocating for myself, for my siblings. And I was always very passionate. And I think a part of that is also because I wasn't given that space to really express myself, or no one was like checking in on me. It came out in my passion for things, or it came out in my doing. I had to do stuff. And so, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question for you. I want to just add for everybody who's watching that I just want to speak up for you because I know that this is a really hard topic for you.
Yeah.
So we can slow down because I could tell, like my question to you was going to be, what are you feeling in your body right now? Because you're very tense.
Like, for one, I can't breathe right now.
that's because of our allergies and everything going on.
Oh, yeah, that's a big part of it right now. I can't really breathe. But second, I also am like, I think I'm working through some of this stuff still too, that it's hard for me to give like a final label to things. And I'm also, while I know personally what those things are categorized or should be categorized, I don't know that I feel ready to make that public and finalized.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to speak up for you about, like just to say that Joanna and I have had conversations about moving forward with the podcast and with our platforms or everything that God calls us to, how we plan to be more open about our lives so that other people can receive healing as well. And so if you're listening to her right now and maybe you feel like you're not understanding, or maybe you're feeling like, what does she mean? Or maybe you feel like she's holding back, it's because she is.
On purpose,
and she's holding back because she's still, or we're still working to the point where we wisely share about ourselves. And so one, I want to thank you for all of your patience as you guys help us to navigate that. And two, I want to thank you for still listening and committing to hearing our hearts as we continue to share our story in the years to come.
Yeah, part of the reason why I'm like hesitant or maybe being vague too is because I feel like some of the stuff, while it's my story, a lot of this stuff involves other people and it's their story too. And I don't know if they feel ready to make that public too. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about it. I've had therapy. The people involved in my family have their friends and support groups and stuff. But I don't know how ready I feel to be like, this is all my dirty laundry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
But I just lived a life that was just not a life that a child should really live.
Yeah.
It was, I'm going to say unfair and unjust. And for those of you that don't believe in the word unfair, I want to hear it right now. Not right now, not for this. And it was rough. It was rough. So what it taught me is to be resilient. But I started to resent that trait because I'm like, you know what? I was forced to be resilient.
Yeah.
And God had to work in me, and thank God, redefined that and said, no, you're tenacious. And I'm like, I'll take that. And I'm coming to terms with resiliency because I know that I am. It's just that it bothers me that I was put in positions where I was forced to. And so I became the glue to my family, my mom's best friend. My mom was my best friend. I saw her shed a lot of tears. I wiped a lot of tears. I prayed a whole lot even before knowing Christ. We were Catholic, as most Latinos are growing up. And I made promises to myself about being my siblings' saving grace. And so at a very young age, you know, like I enjoyed kid things, like I enjoyed watching TV and Power Rangers and this and that. You know, the typical 90s kid. And I enjoyed playing with my cousin or my cousins because we were closer to family at the time when we lived in New York. And then we moved to Jersey, so we were far from family. And I was just so wrapped up in keeping my family safe and keeping my siblings safe and myself and making sure that I did everything in my power to succeed financially, career. I was like 6 when I was making these promises, okay? I was like 6 years old, 7 years old. I was very young, and as I grew up, I was making these promises to myself about how I needed to succeed at a high level so that I could be depended on, so that there was an escape. And I did that. I did just that. And so fast forward, in the second grade, I was about 7 years old. I met my best friend, Marion, and she saw a lot of what I lived through and was there. Thank you. And her family too. And we also shared a lot of crazy memories, a lot of crazy things. I was a typical kid, typical teenager, you know, when you get to high school, it's like, whoa, this whole new world. And we got to go to high school together.
Who was it that stabbed who with scissors?
Oh my God. Technically, I stabbed myself with scissors by accident.
Crazy, just straight crazy.
So it was around that SpongeBob era. And Marion and I decided that we wanted to write a story. We were just in her room and we were writing stories, and she took out all her arts and crafts stuff. And I kept bothering her and I kept smacking her leg. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if she was writing or if she was like drawing or coloring, I don't know. But she was, I kept smacking her leg randomly and she was concentrated. And I was like, I guess I was tired. I guess like, can we do something else? And at one point I smacked her leg. I didn't see that she had scissors in her hand. And it was bad, but I survived. My hands are here. Anyway, that was a sidebar. So we went to elementary school together for a little bit, then she moved, and then We end up convincing my parents somehow that I should go to high school with her. So I do. And she was my anchor through high school. And there was just so much that I was dealing with that it was hard to, as a kid, when you're dealing with so much life issues, it's hard to expect that any person, child or not, to really focus on your day-to-day responsibilities. And my day-to-day responsibilities at the time were school, and that was hard. So they used to let us go out to eat our lunch like outside, which was really cool. And I always went out. I hated going to the cafeteria. I hated going to stay in line. I didn't like the food. Call me bougie, but I didn't like the food. Mm-hmm. And one day, I didn't want to go out by myself, and I decided I'm just going to go to the cafeteria. It was also really overwhelming because while I was like friendly with everyone, I was also like, there's too many people. This is too much. Like, I like people. I like being around people, but younger Joe was like, that's too much. This is too much. And like, then you have to choose where you're going to sit. And then you have the different personalities on the line waiting for food, and people want to be sneaky and cut. And you're like, oh, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to, but that's not fair. But so it was really uncomfortable. And I didn't want to do all that. I just I just want my food. Can I just get my food? And I just want to sit. I just want to sit and eat. So I went to the cafeteria that day, and my parents, my mom was a little more lenient. My dad was like, you can't do nothing. No fun ever. So, you know those like memes that say like, if you had fun one day, you can't have fun the next
day. Yeah.
Or in the same week. Mm-hmm. If I had fun
my
one
mom was
year,
the same with me.
I couldn't have fun the next year.
It wasn't as bad, but she would be like, didn't you go out yesterday?
Yeah. Uh-huh. So, and then I had to like prove myself that I was worthy to even ask to go out. And then there would still be a no.
Clean the whole house and cook a whole dinner.
And you could still get a no.
You could still get a no.
Yeah. So, it was a weekday, obviously, and I don't know how I end up with this group of friends. They probably saw me and were like, hey, Joe. And I was like, yay, someone's calling me over. I have somewhere to sit. Mm-hmm, yeah. And so we're having lunch together, and randomly he's like, what are you doing on Wednesday? And I'm like, nothing, because it's Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And he tells me about this web class. And he's like, do you want to go? And I'm like, excited me, because I was shyer when I was young, but internally I was like, I want to do all the things with all the people. Uh-huh. Sign me up, whatever it is, I want to be there. So I said yes. And then I was like, oh my God, how am I going to break this down to my parents? Like, yeah. So God was on my side because they said yes.
Which was a miracle within itself.
Which was a miracle. Supernatural, divine miracle. So I go to this Bible class, some random guy in Elizabeth.
Some random
house. It was in his house in his basement. Some random place. Now I'm making it sound sketchy.
Yeah. Now it's like, for people who don't know, they're like, who is this guy?
Did you go to a cult? Are you telling us that you're in a cult? Uh-huh. So if you don't already know, it was this guy.
Hello.
It turns out that it was Eric's Bible class. And I come in on a funny day because he was holding Bible class in his basement.
That day was like the worst first day of all time.
He was like having like applications or descriptions of like roles to support the Bible class.
Yeah.
Because it was a big class. Like he needed the help. Right. And I'm like, what am I filling out?
Now that I think back to that, I'm just like, what was I? I mean, I was 16. You were 15, so I was 16. So I was just trying stuff.
Yeah,
like,
you
I was
were.
just, yeah, I was just
You
like.
were. It was pretty admirable, though. I was like, wow, this is very
What did
organized.
you interview for?
I did an interview for nothing, but I had a paper there, and I'm just like, I'm gonna have to look like I'm doing something because I don't know what to do here.
Yo, 6-year-old would be like, yes, we're gonna hold interviews today for assistants. I don't even remember what else we had, but
Like
I
you
remember
had
I made a whole
people,
bunch of
designated
roles.
people for praying, for following up. Like it was legit. Like it was legit stuff. And we had a lot of people there.
What I would do if I could mentor 16-year-old me. Anyway, sorry.
So, so that happens on the first day, and I come back. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna count this as a first day
because came back. Worst first day.
Because I'm like, I'm not gonna count this as a first day because clearly this isn't a normal class.
Wait, hold up. That's actually not the worst first day anybody ever experienced. Jovan had the worst first day.
Why?
On his first day, we were doing plays. People are gonna be like, what kind of Bible studies was this guy having, right?
He's basically having church.
We were doing plays that everybody would go and make them. Like I don't remember how it was. Yeah, skits. Yeah. And I think we split up into small groups, and then you would get a skit and come play it. And Jovan played the devil on his first day at Bible class. And he always used to tell me that.
That's funny.
He'd be like, yeah, I'll never forget my first day. I played the devil.
He wasn't a Christian yet?
No, he grew up Christian all his life, but
It's not so bad.
It's not, but it's just funny as a first day you come in and you're the guy who plays the devil on your first day there. If he wasn't, like, if he didn't grow up in the church, that would have been crazy. But
so I give him another chance, and another miraculous thing, I get to go. My parents let me go.
yeah,
And thankfully, some of my friends have cars, so great because I did not, and I could. I mean, I was 15, so. And I got to go, and it's an intense night because it was at night. It was an intense night of prayer, and I will never forget it. That's the night that I accepted Christ. That's the night that I encountered God for myself. That's the night that I encountered the Holy Spirit. That is the night where I encountered freedom internally. That's the night where some things in my life got redefined. And some of the things that I just was working so hard at in my mind were realigned. Like I had all this worry for my family that I was like, now I have someone to submit it to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not by myself.
Wow.
And it's crazy because the very first thing I did, my very first prayer after accepting Christ, the motivator for accepting Christ was my family.
Wow.
I said, well, if you're telling me that accepting Christ is going to change my life, then it can change my family. Sign me up. I'm everywhere where I need to be. I'm there. And my first prayer after accepting Christ was for my family. And I was fervently praying for my family since day one.
I remember.
Day one. Till this day.
Yeah.
And that's, the funny thing is, plot twist. So the group of friends that invited me ended up not staying. And I didn't know anyone else in this group. And I'm like, man, but I just made this big commitment. And I don't think I fully knew what it meant.
They left soon after that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember a lot of stuff happened.
Yeah, like they just didn't come back.
Yeah.
And I was like,
now you're like, I just started coming here and I made a commitment. Should I keep coming? Or?
Yeah, but I'm very big on, if I made a commitment, I made a commitment. And if I'm going to give something a try, I'm going to give something a try.
So in your mind, though, because you didn't make a commitment to us, you made a commitment to God, right? But how did you connect the two and say, you know what, I'm going to keep coming? Because I remember you saying like that was hard for you because you didn't have friends there, right?
Yeah.
So
how did it happen?
Yeah, how did it?
I think because that's the place where I encountered God that was like, for me, the connection. I'm like, where else am I going to continue to grow in this commitment? how do I find this anywhere else? So
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to plug in to this group of people, really a community that was offering and was teaching and was discipling. And at the time I didn't know those things in that way, but I felt like it was necessary for my growth in that commitment with Christ.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to stick to that commitment with Christ, then I knew I needed to be there. And I knew I needed to just get out of my comfort zone from day one and just dive in fully. And I think that speaks to, one, just the way that I grew up and having to make decisions and move a little fast. And also God, in giving me that courage to just be there anyway. So I think that's a good place to stop with that.
So you at 15 and me at 10, and people might hear that and think, oh, wow, look at that. You know, they were just dedicated to God since their youth. And I would say that when you are a young person that comes to Jesus, you do avoid a lot of things, but you're still a young person. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to have experiences that hurt you, some that you hurt yourself in. You have a lot of maturing to do. I was a 12-year-old kid leading a Bible study. I didn't know what I was doing half the time. In the beginning, I remember for the first year, there was a lady, man, God bless her. She used to write the Bible studies for me. She would create the classes for me. And eventually then they gave me like these little booklets. I treasure these booklets so much, and I don't know where they are. I wish I could find them. Maybe my mom has them. And if I think I remember that correctly, they were bilingual. It was in Spanish and English, or it was Spanish and somebody translated it for me. And it was like these little classes that you could give on like random topics of the faith. And it's funny because even me starting the Bible study, it was all because we used to go to another small group, me and my mom. It was an adult small group, and there was mad kids. And they were like, why don't we put the kids in another room? And we were too young to we were too old to like have playtime, and they didn't want to do that anyways. And they said, why don't we have them have their own little small group? And they were like, well, I think I was the oldest, or maybe they just felt like I was mature. And they said, we'll make Eric the leader. And then I started inviting all my friends, and they were like, wait, what's going on? Like, we may have done something here with one intention and started like
a whole movement, a whole ministry.
Yeah, a whole ministry. And then they were like, okay, no, we actually think instead of you just doing this, we think we need to release you and you start your own thing. And that's what they did. Like, for them to be like, yo, we trust this 13-year-old kid. It wasn't that long. It was only a few months. They were like, you need to run with this. They told my mom, I guess. And I did for almost 15 years.
I led that Bible study. Miraculous and such a God story.
Thousands of people came into that group. Thousands.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, some people that I don't even remember them, like, because they came for a very short period. But I've encountered some people where they're like, yeah, I went to your Bible study. Or there's people that I know, and they'll be like, yeah, I remember going to your Bible. And I was like, you came? Because they didn't really commit, but they came a few times maybe. And, you know, like the times when we had 50 people in the living room.
And in the living room and the dining room.
Yeah, and it's like you came and you became a part of that. all because of my obedience as a little kid to say yes to God. And I say all that to say that I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Made a lot of mistakes. A kid leading kids. And the kids coming were looking to me as their leader, but I was a kid just like them, going through the same thing they was going through. And I was failing them, and they took it to heart at times, and it was hard, which you always had a lot of grace for me. You always had a lot of grace for me. It's not because we were together, because we were friends for
a very long time.
For like 8 years before we got together.
Something like that.
So, but you always had mad grace for me, even when I was a jerk at times.
Well, you were never a jerk to me, but I also I think I saw the level of responsibility on your shoulders, and that you were still
your age.
A kid.
I was your age. I'm only a year older.
I think I was also really grateful for, I think I understood it then. I just didn't have the words for it that I do now. People are just complex and are people, and it's not black and white.
Yeah.
It's not black or white, it's black and white. And I think that, you know, it's nice when you like, it's nice when you make a mistake and then you're like, yeah, you know, you don't repeat that same mistake. And then it's like, oh, you repeated the same mistake. Like, what's going on? But that's just not how things work as people. Like, we make the same mistake all the time, you know? And there's just a lot that goes into it. I feel like, I don't know. I think I was able to see Christ in you. Like, I was able to experience that. I was able to experience the authenticity of how your shortcomings, and still working hard at trying to submit to Christ and submit to this big responsibility. And I was just like, oh, guys, chill out.
Yeah, no,
it's okay.
If you're young or old, and listening to this, don't let your shortcomings stop you from taking a risk, and don't let your shortcomings stop you from serving other people, or from, you know, stepping into a leadership role, because you're never gonna not have shortcomings. And
there were times as I got more involved and I had more time in the group that I got closer, and there were times where I was like, I don't know about this, Eric. I don't know about that decision.
Yeah.
And I came to you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. It was not comfortable, especially because you're also very strong-willed.
Yeah.
So.
And even more so when I was younger.
Even more so when he was younger. So it was like a little bit intimidating, but I was like, I'm also the kind of person that's like, if it ain't right, it's just not right. So I'm gonna tell you. and I remember approaching you a couple times, like, I don't agree with this, or I don't think this is okay, or I think you need to, that's it, rethink this, reevaluate this. And we bumped heads on those, in those conversations, and I just had to be like, well, you know, it is what it is. Like, I can't force somebody to do something. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is what it is.
Right. And but I always respected the fact that you were honest with me. I remember that for sure. I can't remember times of us bumping heads, but I know I respected the fact that you were honest with me. And yeah, most people aren't honest enough with leaders. They would rather talk about it with the people that they're there with behind their leader's back than go to the leader. And I get it, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. And it's easy to vent / gossip. Yeah, depending depending where your heart is. But yeah, it's like, if you really truly want to see change, then you're going to have those tough conversations.
Yeah, having hard conversations.
Yeah. So that's a small piece of our testimony, a little bit of what led up to our conversion experience and what happened after. And, you know, with you, for example, you just jumped into church. Like, not everybody that came to Bible study came to church, and you started going to church soon after and committed, and then eventually everybody found out that you sang, which none of us knew. And you were on the worship team and serving in the children's ministry and teaching and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
It was, so remember how I said that growing up, I felt like I had to make all these decisions. There wasn't time to stop. And that also made me become very committed. I was already very committed to Christ. So I was like, I already understood as I grew up in the faith, I understood this is kingdom work. So if it's kingdom work, it's priority.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me that there's a need here and you're asking me to do it, there's no questions. There's no time to think about it. You just do. And so I did.
Right.
And so for me, it was very important to fill the need or to do the work because it was kingdom work for me.
Yeah.
And in some instances it was frustrating, in some instances it was hard. I was young and those above me were also figuring it out. And it was hard, but it also, the hard parts is also what made me cling closer to God and seek after God and learn and lean in. So it taught me more about what the community of Christ is like, and how I shouldn't expect perfection either.
I think that's a good place for us to end. That's always how we segue. I think that's a good place for us to end.
It's very therapy session-y.
I don't understand how, okay, sidebar. I don't understand how therapists almost always end on time. It'll be this is me, right? I've been in therapy sessions before where it's 4 minutes left and we're at this crazy point, and somehow in those 4 minutes, they bring it down and wrap it up. It's an art. They don't always wrap it up perfectly because sometimes you're so open, but whatever, sorry. It's neither here nor there.
My therapist had I think she had a clock right above
behind you
where she could look, but then she'd also have an alarm because I think she would get really into it. Oh, dang,
yeah, that's funny. I would probably need an alarm because I'd be
I know I needed alarms for my counseling sessions.
Yeah, that's a good way to signal to them too that we're nearing the end.
Yeah.
But we are nearing the end of this podcast, and we want to thank you guys. If you are still here and you got to the end, drop a comment down below saying I made it to the end. And have an amazing week. We will see you guys for the next one. God bless you guys. Peace.
Bye.